We learned this week that another big name in the news is about to make an exit, but unlike Brian Williams, Jon Stewart is leaving voluntarily. For nearly 2 decades now, Stewart has been a walking contradiction, a comedian who makes fun of the news media while also becoming one of its most trusted names. Adam Riley has more.
17 years is the longest I have ever in my life held a job.
It was an announcement that nobody saw coming. This week, Daily Show anchor Jon Stewart announced that he's stepping down after nearly 17 years.
It's been an absolute privilege. It's been the honor of my professional life. But this show doesn't deserve an even slightly restless host, and neither do you.
Under Stewart's watch, the Comedy Central program broke through the cable clutter and became essential viewing. Stewart never ditched his fondness for lowbrow humor.
Mr. Mayor, without these giant cups, where are homeless people going?
But his satire could also be deadly serious, like his famed takedown of then Fox News host Glenn Beck.
What's this word right here? Con! A con is a convict!
Sometimes Stewart seemed unsure how seriously he should take himself. In 2004, he went on CNN's Crossfire and ripped that show as toxic, but bristled when the hosts tried to criticize him.
I didn't realize that, and maybe this explains quite a bit, the opportunity is that the news organizations look to Comedy Central for their cues on integrity.
But at his 2010 rally to restore sanity and/or fear, which drew 200,000 people to the Washington Mall, Stewart sounded less like a TV star and more like a budding politician.
We work together to get things done every damn day. The only place we don't is here or on cable TV.
That passion wasn't always evident on The Daily Show, where ironic snark was par for the course, which might be one reason Jon Stewart is moving on.
I don't know. I didn't watch that often because I didn't stay up that late, but I used to watch it on, if I taped it or something. He was hilariously funny, but I always was sort of troubled by this idea that he was so, argumentative when it came to the idea that, he was also doing the news. It was strictly comedy. It wasn't strictly comedy. It was news commentary, which, using the news as a background, but there was comedy there, but like he did this whole riff just recently on getting into, it was on Brian Williams, on getting into Iraq and the reasons for getting into Iraq, that mainstream media hooked us into it and everything. But that was commentary.
I thought he was the best and most influential media critic of our time, and probably, you're right, he probably wouldn't want to hear that, but I think it was true. I think this leaves an enormous void, and you know what I really liked about him? Sometimes in all the bias wars, people would say, well, he's a liberal, and it's true. He was a dyed-in-the-wool liberal, but he would dish it out to anybody, and I think that's what made him so
because I'm sure he's friends
excellent.
with Brian Williams, and he cut him right down.
Yes, he did, absolutely.
It's interesting that, in some ways you can look at the rise of The Daily Show under Jon Stewart as another example of people going to news sources that make them feel good. Conservatives want to go to Fox News because Fox News makes them feel that they're always right. Liberals and young people went to The Daily Show for a similar reason, even though I don't want to compare those two in a lot of other ways. But I've personally felt that his act was getting a little bit tired. I think you could sort of see that the job was wearing on him over time. When he said that the show deserves a host who is really into it and is not having a wandering eye, to me that was indicated. I think it's going to be really hard to replace him. Of all the candidates that have been thrown out there have been a lot of people who are very funny, and I do think, though, you can look at the early days of Jon Stewart's Daily Show and how long it took to find the voice that makes sense, that made sense, that connected with an audience, how it took a particular political environment for that to grow. And I think it's going to be a very real challenge for whoever takes his place to establish him or herself.
I also can't wait to see how he reinvents himself after he's no longer connected with the show. I mean, when I was working on that piece, it almost felt like an obituary, and I think that's because he is so intimately linked with the show, and now that they're splitting, it's kind of hard to imagine either one going on. I think you see in that footage of him during the rally to restore sanity and/or fear, he may have hidden behind this, oh, don't criticize me, I'm just a comedian line, but he doesn't, I think, just want to be a comedian. I think he has much bigger aspirations. It's almost like he sees himself at times as a leader of a social movement, or someone restoring sanity to America. And I don't know how he's going to do that.
There's a model, Al Franken,
you're right. You're right.
He just directed that movie, which was
Rosewater.
no good.
Well.
And he was an actor before that, but I think you start with it. He was a comedian, but he was a comedian who was passionate about news. And the technique that he used that I thought was so effective over time was essentially catching public figures in their own hypocrisy by simply showing them over time, saying whatever it was they want to say, which is what Tim Russert used to do so well. So he took a technique that one of the best journalists of our lifetimes used, and he brought it to criticism, and nobody else is doing that anymore, I don't think, or not as well. And that part will be missed. I do hope there's somebody who will attempt to come in. I'm hoping there is a successor.
I'm curious about the younger generation, because when my daughter was a teenager, all through her 20s, she watched Jon Stewart, but do the young people still?
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And you say you never sat down at 11 to watch. Neither did I. His show was for the internet era. You'd catch clips on YouTube. You might watch some of it on demand the next day. I mean, that it was perfect for that media environment, and I think that's one of the other reasons it worked so well.
We should mention that there was this sort of backlash that arose immediately with people like Jamel Bowie on Slate and Joanna Weiss in the Globe, suggesting that there was a downside to Stewart's method, that he made people snarkier when it came to politics, more detached, or if not him, that his imitators did that in some way he sort of cheapened political discourse. I'm not sure I entirely buy that. I don't know what you all think, but I think that's a tough case to make.
Yeah.
I think there's something to that.
Yeah?
I think there's a real sense in which because he wouldn't admit to the news commentary piece and he had to stick to the comedy piece, he would twist the knife in ways that would make people come away with it thinking there's just nothing worth saving here.